What is up, bros? Josh here, and today's video is all about the World of Warships devlog, and I'm starting to think we're going to see World of Warships 2, because every few days I wake up to see new changes coming to the game, and the newest ones are all about the radar changes as well as flooding changes. Now, if you remember a couple days back, I did some Des Moines gameplay, and we talked about the upcoming radar changes. At that time, we didn't know what a few of the values were. Now we know those, and the main ones were just the change to how the radar consumable works. So in the past, the radar ship would radar anything within that range. Let's just use the destroyer as an example. That destroyer would be spotted within that radar range for the duration of that radar, and everybody on the radaring ship's team would be able to see that ship for the duration and then shoot at said ship. They're changing how that works. Now, as soon as the radaring ship radars the destroyer, only that ship that radars will see the destroyer initially, and there will now be a delay. We see it will be 6 seconds for that delay, which basically gives the destroyer time to get away without taking an immense amount of damage. After that 6 seconds, now the rest of the team will be able to see that ship as long as it's within that radar range. So that's a kind of an interesting change. It allows destroyers to get away from not being in radar range, because it does definitely suck, even in like a competitive, if you do get caught out in radar, and then just seeing instantly, if you have priority target, 5-6 ships pop up and you go from 100 to 0. It happens to all of us, and it is a bit of a bummer, especially if you're going against like a stacked radaring division where there's 2 or 3 radars in one division, and there's just perma radar and you get screwed over. So it does add a delay. It'll be interesting to see how the game kind of decides with overlapping radars, but now we know that there will be a 6-second delay. We didn't know initially, but now we know that now. So 6 seconds, that'll hopefully give you enough time to get out of range, or at least far enough away that you can disengage from the radar range. But that's not the only change coming to radar. Now we're kind of getting this we're getting increased durations. We're also getting a standardized. So there's a lot going on. So I wanted to make this quick little video to keep everyone up to date. So the radar changes are changing, and the radar consumable itself and now has a 6-second delay. So that means everyone else on the radar and ship will be able to see you and then shoot at you. So due to the change in the mechanics, some ships will receive an increase in radar duration. Now this is kind of interesting too. So in the past, destroyers have had very short range as well as very short duration radars, which tend to be around 7.5 kilometers, and now we're seeing an increase to their duration. So the USS Black, the Hinsanyang, Chungmu, and Yu Yang, the USS Black being the steel ship, the only one outside of the Pan Asian line that has a radar right now. So we're seeing a small increase to those. Biggest ones we've seen is, of course, the increase from the Yu Yang from 20 to 25. That's pretty sizable, especially if you add on the radar consumable. You can get a little bit more out of that. But the USS Black also getting a bit of an increase, as well as other destroyers. It's interesting to me. We could see more radar and DDs, which could turn up the chance of more people running those. I know Wargaming wants to get away from everyone kind of running the cookie cutter builds that we've seen in the past. That seems like they're really trying to get away from those. And this is kind of a sense. Maybe we'll see more Yu Yang legendary mods. Who knows? One thing that's interesting, though, is the Chungmu and the USS Black are both tier 9 ships. Now, all of these changes we're going to go over today, they do not have a set date. So will they be live in 8.0? And the main thing I bring up is the tier 9s here, is that the next ranked battle is going to be tier 9. So will these affect those? We're not sure yet. There hasn't been a set date for those actually changing, but 5 seconds across the board for the tech tree ships, only 2 for the USS Black, which I think is very fair. But the Chungmu is getting on par with the USS Black. Dmitry Donskoy, another tier 9, and the Kronstadt both getting buffed out to 25 seconds, and Moscow from 25 to 30. Same with the Stalingrad, so interesting that the Russian line, kind of known for having long range, shorter duration, are now getting long range, longer duration. So a bit of a interesting thing there. Again, not sure if this will go live. We don't have a set date. Not sure if it will go live during the rank season, but could be a nice little boost to the Donskoy potentially, as well as the Kronstadt, and even the Chungmu and of course USS Black will be really, really strong. Radar range has been standardized. We saw something like this happen with the sonar ranges, so not really surprising. It seems like Wargaming wants to get away, like I said, from cookie cutter builds, but they want to make the numbers kind of just easier to remember, apparently. So radar range of the Soviet cruisers, the Chappie, the Donskoy, Kronstadt, Moscow, Stalingrad, has been increased from 11.7 to 12 kilometers. So now we're getting a tad longer duration on all of these. Actually, the Chappie isn't affected. So longer duration and now longer range on the Russian destroyer or Russian cruisers, sorry. And the radar range of the American light cruisers, Cleveland, Seattle, Worcester, remain at the same at 9 and 8.5 for Atlanta. So Russian cruisers getting the extended range and extended duration. USN lines staying the same. So we're seeing some interesting play, well, at least for the light cruisers. So I guess that's kind of good. The radar range for American heavy cruisers, however, are getting buffed. So this kind of makes sense. The light cruisers pump out more DPM and are dangerous. So I kind of like that. Shorter range radars for the higher DPM, longer range radars for the lower DPM. So we're seeing a bit of a change here. Baltimore, Buffalo, Des Moines, Indy, the tier 7 premium, Alaska, all getting buffed up to 10 kilometers now. Some of those are marginal, but one thing that's nice now is, does that have 9.4? Does it have 9.9? Is it 9? So now it's across the board, but we're getting sizable buffs to the Baltimore. Same as the Salem is going to stay the same at 8.5, so that 10 will stay the same. Wichita, which the 9.9 or 9 will stay there as well. But we're seeing sizable increases to the Buffalo as well as the Baltimore. So those are kind of nice, a nice little buff for those cruisers. Some people especially don't like those cruisers. So those are getting nice little boosts. So we're seeing kind of this, it kind of makes sense for these, although longer range radar for longer durations for some ships aren't going to be too popular. For battle cruise or for the British cruisers, Edinburgh, Neptune, Minnow, all getting buffed out to 10, and the Belfast remaining the same at 8.5. If they would have buffed the Belfast, there probably would have been pitchforks in the forums. But big upgrade there again to the Edinburgh, going out to 10 kilometers. We could start seeing more radar Edinburghs. Same with the Neptune getting buffed out. I think it's right on the edge if it can technically stealth radar. I think the Neptune is 10.1 off the top of my head. I can't quite remember. So it's just going to be easier to remember which tiers have which. So you won't be like, oh, is that 9.4? Is it 9.0? Is it 10? Blah, blah, blah. It's at least going to be easier to remember. We're seeing a big change to that. One, it's going to be easier for players not paying attention and not bad map awareness and getting away from radar. Especially if you're a skilled player, you're just going to take overall less damage, so you can get excited about that. But there are going to be longer range radars, so you have to be a bit more careful, but it's going to be easier to remember. I personally have a tough time kind of remembering all the changes to these, and we're kind of seeing just a generalized, equalized range on kind of a lot of things in this game. Sonar, now radar. Maybe we'll see it with AA in the future, but these are some pretty big changes. So radar definitely getting worked over. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think about this. Just kind of everything changing there. Interface improvements, that'll always be good. Visual effects, and one of the last things I want to go over in this video, so it's not too long, is the flooding changes. This is obviously having to do with CVs, and but when you change one thing for one class, it affects another, and that is the class that tends to be extremely, well, it tends to just get weaker and weaker over time, and that is the IJN torp boats. So what's actually happening there is the flooding mechanics, as the duration of the flood as well as the damage of the flood is getting nerfed. So new flooding mechanics will be implemented similar to those of fire mechanics. The ship can suffer 2 floodings on the front and back halves, so that is something new. Until now, it's only been like a 1 flood kind of throughout the whole thing. So now there's 2, and flooding cannot be inflicted on part of the ship that's already flooding. So very interesting there. So you're gonna have to kind of take the spread out there. This is kind of nice. Maybe you can angle in, take less damage over time, but the flooding duration without modifiers has been reduced. This is pretty big on this part, from 90 seconds to 40 seconds, 30 seconds still on CVs, but 90 to 40, that's big, 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 big. So especially adding some modifiers like basic survivability and high alert, those are going to be prime. And the rate of hit points lost from one flood has been reduced as well, and 0.66 or 2/3% to 1/4 per second for CVs, 2/3% to 1/2 per battleship in Kronstadt, Stalingrad, Azuma, and Alaska, the big battle cruisers, and then 2/3 to 1/4, blah blah blah. You can go over this all yourself, but these are pretty sizable changes here. So not only are they going to do less damage over time, they're going to be flooding for less. This is obviously having to do with CVs, obviously just flooding out ships. So floods won't be as nasty, which is kind of nice. Obviously, if we've ever had to repair, that's one thing we can see with the current CVs is they'll drop, 2 dive bombers or whatever, and we're stuck on 2 or 3 fires. We have to repair those, and then they come in with torp bombers and then just flood us to death. Or we take some random unlucky torp that comes out of nowhere from Nasashio, and then we're stuck on that flood, and then we take a crazy amount of damage. So this is kind of nice as a player, but it does affect other ships like destroyers, especially ones that focus all on torps. So I'm not quite sure. This is something we're gonna have to see how it's live. Most of your damage from DDs anyways comes from the alpha damage of torpedoes, but flooding is something that definitely does add to the game. So is this kind of a overall nerf? They're trying to save battleships and trying to save ships from CVs, obviously, but is it affecting another class too much? That's what I'm interested to see what happens with this. Flooding will reduce the power of the engine when moving forward by 30% and moving back up by 60%. So very interesting there as well. I mean, obviously it's always affected there. But a good example is, and this just shows the big change here. For an example, a British Conqueror gets flooding in the bow because it's hit by a torpedo. Pre-work, that's the current one, would cause 49,000, almost 50,000 damage. Yes, a lot of it is repairable, if not stopped. New flooding would cause much less, 16,000. So, and then 2 simultaneous floods. So 2 full floods for 33 compared to a normal flood would cause almost 50. That is a big difference in damage. So right there is something that is just, we're going to have to feel it out and see how it plays. This affects ships like IGN torp destroyers are the ones I see that are going to get affected the most. And maybe like Pan-Asian DDs that would use a lot more of the torp damage and that kind of thing. So forcing repairs is going to be something that just doesn't reward as much. So it kind of takes a little bit of skill out of it and kind of rewards maybe straight line sailing battleships a little bit more. It's interesting to see these changes over time. It does take some skill out, but it is good quality of life. So is it worth it? Is it a good balance? That's kind of what I'm seeing here. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of the flooding changes here. I'm interested in that. If you are a Torp DD main, are you looking forward to this? If you're a battleship main, I bet you are just so happy about this. I know we all are, because it sucks to take that full flood duration. As for cruisers and DDs, flooding damage goes down even farther for them. Let's see, for example, the Kagero pre-work flooding would cause up to 9,000 damage for a DD, probably killing or partially damaging. New flooding takes around 1,500. So who even cares? Embrace the broadside sitting DDs and cap. Who cares? You're not going to flood at all. Yes, the alpha damage is still the major threat here. The 1,500 damage compared to 9K. Who cares? Just take a torp. It's no big deal. But yeah, so this is something we're gonna have to feel out. Again, I think the radar change is something that is just gonna be nice for DDs. If you mess up once, you're not guaranteed dead. Although 6 seconds will go by relatively quickly, but if you are paying attention, you can kind of haul ass out and get out of range and hopefully live. So again, we have no date on when this will go live or if these values are finalized. This is all preliminary. So will it go live in 8.0? We don't know. But my God, every few days we see some big old changes from World of Warships. And if you're in 6 months from now, if we look back a year, it's going to look like a different game. It's going to be crazy with how many changes are coming. But let me know in the comments below what you guys think of both the radar and the flooding changes. I'm interested to hear what you guys think. I like kind of doing these videos of wrapping up all these changes and kind of having conversations with you guys in the comments. Because it's good to see what the community thinks about these upcoming changes. But anyways, guys, lots of changes coming. Here's 2 more with both radar and flooding. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. But that's it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.